Dhamma jomden de java da jomba yandava zobe sanje riba da shamso demba devara shiv jigden jemba jebun deve kalo jurwa lana meba lada menam je demba sanje jomden Pejawa jaja duba la jaze lo chedo jazo che ho etomba chomden de tishin shing cha chomba yandamba zoben sanje rikpa dan shabsu temba dewara sheb jikden jemba jebu duwe kalo jurwa lana meba lada menam je tomba sanje chomden Pejawa jaja duba la janzen lo jado japso che ho damba jomden de dishin sheba cha chomba yandaba zobe sanje Rigba dan japso demba dewara sheba jikden jemba jebu dube kalo jurba lana meba Lada me namje domba sanje chomden de pejawa shaja tuba la chaze chedo japso che ho sanje cheda soje chonam janju bado dane japso che dage cheshe jebe chonamanje Dola penje sanje dobara sho sanje chodan soje chonam chanju bado dane japso che dage cheshe gebe chonam je Dola penje sanje dobara sho sanje chodan soje chonam la chanju bado dane japso Dagi zhuzhi jibi zonamanji zhola penji sanje dhubara shos. Good morning to all of you. So here we are to our final class for this year. In fact, we have finished going through the, I think, one of the longest chapters in Bodhicaryavatara. And we have completed. And here we are trying to recap. So time flies. The question is, since the beginning of this class until now, how much we have learned, and most importantly, how much we have applied our understanding in our life, in our daily life. So today this class is supposed to be a revision class. It is very tough to really do the revision of the whole chapter. I won't be doing justice to the chapter itself if I really try to do that. So instead of really doing a revision, I thought that, in my view, how we can use some of these lines into our daily practice. If we were having this class, in-person class in person, then I would have asked that, I could have asked these questions and you may have your own answer. So what I'm going to share today is based on my perspective, my take on this chapter. So let's see. So first, just to recap, what is patience? When we say that, we need to develop tolerance and patience, we have to be patient in the face of difficulties, especially when we encounter difficult people. Does it mean that we condone whatever injustice they do, or we just take on everything? So here, the patience, how patience is defined is this: the ability to remain firm and steadfast, to not be overwhelmed by the adverse situations or conditions that one faces. So tolerance is not just simply remaining, not retorting when we encounter difficult people. It is also about our circumstances, our situations. So when we encounter or face difficulties, challenges in our life, instead of getting agitated, frustrated, angry, and then consequently reacting on that anger. So patience is to have this ability to remain calm, no matter what the situation is, no matter what the other person is saying or doing, not to be overwhelmed by difficult situations. So how can we do that? So they are not just suppressing our anger or feeling, it's using these antidotes that Shantideva has mentioned in the chapter. Apply these antidotes. And then there will come a time when we are able to face any adverse situation, any difficult situation, any difficult person. We will be able to remain calm. So that's why the measure of perfecting patience is when we are able to apply their antidotes and not let them arise in any situation. Then it says we have perfected patience. So now the question is, let's say there are so many people whom we really dislike, and there are people who are really out to get us. There are people who really hate us and who are always seems like trying to cause harm to us. So does patience means that we have to eliminate all of these people? Do we have to make sure that there is no presence of such what you call the obstacles? So Shantideva says that's not the case, and it is also impossible. Remember this famous line? How could you find enough leather to cover all of the earth's surface? Just enough leather to cover your feet is like having enough to cover the entire earth. So I'm not going to explain this. So this is, in a way, when you understand this point, it is very encouraging, it is very inspiring that the cure or the antidote or the remedy is not out there. It's not in somebody else's power or somebody else's hand. It is within us. It is within our own capacity, in our own hand. When we realize that, then we feel like, oh, I can do something about it. If I don't want to experience the consequences, the negative consequences of anger, frustration, and whatnot, we can say that, oh, I can do something about it. It is within my ability. If it is completely dependent on somebody else or external things, then of course we feel hopeless because we feel that there's nothing we ourselves can do. But Shantideva was saying is that's not the case. You are your own savior. That's why the next line says, similarly, how can I combat all external enemies? All I need to do to repel them is to transform my own mind. So that's the cure. That's the panacea, is it? To solve all the sickness or illness or problems relating to losing our anger. So if we're able to transform any form of frustration, anger, hatred into patience, then it is like, what is the term? It is like eliminating or repelling all that problems related to anger. So first we need to realize that we are our own savior, and we have the ability. It is within our ability, within our reach, in our hands. With that in mind, so now let's see in Bodhicaryavatara. So there are three types. It is explained that there are three types of patience. the patience of accepting suffering. So this is very, very important. We suffer so much because we don't have the patience to accept suffering. So the patience of accepting suffering is being able to voluntarily and courageously bear the difficulties that may be experienced in the course of our life, especially when we practice Dharma, especially when we endure the path of Bodhisattvas. There are so many challenges. Just being in this existence, there are so many challenges. All of these difficulties are inevitable because we are in this imperfect world. So if we fail to accept our pain and take the required, or what you call the appropriate approach, then it can magnify the pain that we are already experiencing. So that's one type of patience. And then another type of patience is the patience of certitude about reality. It is about understanding the nature of reality, how the interdependent or how the dependent origination is at the base, is at the play, how things come together. Many things needs to come together for something to happen. It is not just simply one thing that is making all this happen. So when we have that kind of an understanding, then our anger towards one object can be reduced. So it is important to have that understanding. And then thirdly, the patience of disregarding harm done to you or to us. So this is normally, we regard patience as tolerating somebody who causes or who inflicts harm. So this is tolerance towards injuries from others. So I will try to bring in some of the verses in relation to these three types of sufferings, three types of patience. So first, the first thing, the most important thing is to we need to contemplate on the disadvantages of anger, how destructive anger can be in terms of happiness in this life and also subsequent lives, the ripening consequences, the ripening results. We have discussed all that and you are well aware of all this. You can tell from your own experience that how anger can destroy our happiness, how anger can strain relationships, how anger can spoil everything. So it is important to really contemplate on these points. Bring into your meditation, your contemplation, your own experience. That when I was angry at that time, I said this and this, and as a result, this and this happens. So this is all because of anger. If I were not angry, I wouldn't have said this. If I hadn't said this, this wouldn't have happened. So bring them into your own contemplation and then come to the point that, oh, anger is really, really bad. We need to bring that to the conviction level. We say that anger is not good, but deep down, do we really believe that anger is not good? So we need to gain that conviction. when we are able to gain that conviction, then we will be less likely to let anger empower us, let anger control us, let anger influence us. So that's why Shantideva, after listing many of its disadvantages, he finally summarizes that in brief, there is nobody who lives happily with anger. Hence the enemy anger creates suffering such as this. So he listed many of these and then said that, in short, who likes to be angry? Nobody lives happily with anger. If anger makes us happy, why not? Since anger destroys happiness and we seek happiness, so that is kind of what you call antithesis. We want happiness on the one hand, on the other hand, we keep engaging in anger. So our real enemy is not the other person who is causing us harm. Shantideva is saying that the real enemy is the anger within us, because it creates suffering not only in this life, also in countless future lives. And then on the other hand, there are benefits, there are advantages of practicing patience. So it is important to reflect on both sides, the pros and cons, how destructive anger is, and how beneficial the counterpart, the patience is. So listing all the benefits, Shantideva again summarizes that, but whoever assiduously overcomes it finds happiness now and hereafter. In this very lifetime, we will be happier. Our relationships will improve. Remember, the research shows that the one important key factor that contributes to our happiness is sustained relationship. So there is no way, if you are an angry person, if you get angry at every small things, there's no way that the relationship can be a good one. If you prefer to sustain or to maintain a good relationship with your partners, with your wife, with your husband, with your children, with your siblings, with your relatives, your family members, your co-workers, we need to cultivate patience and reduce anger. So that's the important thing. The first step into developing patience is to contemplate on the disadvantages of anger and the benefits or the advantages of patience. So when we do that, then we will have this strong wish to reduce anger and increase our level of patience. So that's the first step. So now the patience of accepting suffering. So that, as I mentioned before, it is very, very important. We are in this existence, what we call cyclic existence, which is a result of our delusion and karma. So nothing really good, nothing ultimate good or it is there. It is in the nature of suffering. Everybody will go through pain and suffering. That is part and parcel of this existence. So these pains and sufferings are inevitable. So, as the saying goes, if life gives you a lemon, then it says, make lemonade out of it and enjoy that. So the pain and suffering and all these undesirable things that comes with our existence, there's nothing we can do. This will happen, but only thing we can do is how to take it, how to cope with it. Unless we become Buddha or we achieve nirvana, we will experience. But if we are able to apply patience, then at least the intensity of suffering would be less. So the first thing that we need to adopt, the first attitude that we need to adopt is that, these are part and parcel. These are expected. These are inevitable. These are bound to happen. It is not something, unexpected happen. So normally when we encounter suffering or pain or undesirable, there's always this negative view that, it's absolutely is bad. So Shantideva is saying that we need to accept suffering, because if we don't, the original suffering will be still there. On top of that, it magnifies. Not only we will suffer physical pain. Let's say if you are having a headache and if you are unable to bear it, and if you get frustrated over it and then angry, what will happen is, on top of the physical pain, we will also suffer mental anguish, mental misery. So the way to develop acceptance is first that we have to reject the idea that suffering is absolutely unpleasant. So how do we do that? One way is use this line, which is one of my favorites. I find this useful all the time. Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? So when we encounter something undesirable, some situation, the first thing is we get panic, and then we get anxious, and then after that all that frustration, anger, all that comes. So first thing is you just have to examine the situation, whether it is something that we can do something about it, whether it is remediable or not. Just to give you an example, this morning when I was prepping for the class, I realized that I didn't have my microphone. I think you noticed that today's class started a bit later than usual. So suddenly it's already time to start. It's already time to start. And then I remember this. Hey, is there anything I can do about it? Yes, there is time. Still, I can make it. I can go over to Oakdale and then get the microphone from there. So you see, if I was kind of what you call overwhelmed by this, anxious and frustrated, why didn't I bring this? Why am I not doing it? It does not help. It does not solve the problem. So this you can apply to any situation. I lost my father. I shared this story several times, I think. So what really helped me get through is this one. I was very close with my father. When I lost my father to cancer, this line really helped me. Feeling sad and depressed, will it help to bring my father back? It will not. I have met people who really grieve too long. What happens is when you grieve too long, then there is a disorder called prolonged grief, which can later develop into depression. So the first thing is the situation. If let's say if you lose somebody, your being sad, will it help the disease? Will it help to bring back? No. What will help? So in this situation, is not, it cannot be remedied. So there's no point about feeling sad about all this. Of course, grief is part of a coping mechanism, but I'm talking about prolonged grief, excessive grief. So this one, any situation you can apply. You just need to examine it closely, whether it is a solvable problem. If it is a solvable problem, then you just go and solve it. If it is unsolvable, then what is the point? Feeling angry about it, unhappy about it, feeling distressed about it. So that's the first. I feel that this is a very important, that we all should kind of utilize this, use this, apply in our life. It is not easy, but if we keep coming back to this point and contemplate and contemplate and contemplate, then it gets easier, and then you can see the point, and then we are more likely to accept. And then, instead of looking at our suffering and undesirable situation as absolutely, bad, we can try to look at it from another angle. Look at the positive sides. Doing that, will it solve the problem, solve our suffering, our pain? It may not. It may not completely remove our suffering, but it will help to reduce the intensity, and maybe we will be able to overcome it faster. So one way is, what is the benefit of undergoing suffering and pain? So Shantideva said that it has its own benefits. Furthermore, suffering has good qualities. Through being disheartened, with it, arrogance is dispelled. So sometimes we see people very arrogant, very filled with conceit, very egoistic. But then when that person undergoes some suffering, major setback, certainly there's humility. It becomes a humbling experience. So there is that benefit. Compassion arises for those in cyclic existence. And when we experience suffering, we become more empathetic. When you come across somebody who has went through the same experience, you tend to relate to that person's experience. You tend to develop sympathy or empathy, and you tend to develop compassion. It's easier to develop compassion because you know how painful that experience is. So it kind of helps to soften us. The pain helps us to soften us. Evil is shunned. When we undergo suffering and pain, then we started to ask questions. Why? Why is this happening? Many people come to Dhamma Center because they have undergone some pain and suffering. It is same with those who come to study psychology. So it is very interesting when I when I did my bachelor's in psychology. So many of my class mates, either they have owned some kind of a I won't say disorder, some situation there, some condition, or their family, one of the family members have some kind of mental disorders. So they come to study psychology with the hope that they can understand better and hopefully can help as well. So likewise, I'm not saying that there are many people come to Dhamma Center because they have experienced pain and suffering. Because we started to ask questions. Why am I experiencing this? And then when we learn about this karma, that it is the result, the ripening of our negative karmas that we have created in the past. So this kind of makes us to refrain from committing more negative karma because we have already gone through such experience and we don't want to experience again. So going through suffering and pain helps us to make us more determined to abstain from committing negative actions. And also, joy is found in virtue. That means we are more determined to cultivate virtue because on the other spectrum, on the other hand, happiness and joy is a result of virtue. So because we seek virtue, we will be more motivated to cultivate virtue. And overall, it urges us to strive towards emancipation, achieving liberation. Because if we don't experience suffering and pain, if we find our existence so pleasant and so desirable, this desire to free ourselves from this existence will never arise. So suffering and pain is the one that help us to engender this desire to be free from this existence. So going through suffering and pain, there are qualities. So that's one way to cope our pain and suffering. Because in life, we will encounter, we have encountered, we will encounter pain and suffering. So when this happens, so adopt another perspective, look from another side. Not only focus on the bad things, but say, oh, what can I get from this? What are the other benefits from this? So when we see the benefits, we will be more open to accepting and then coping. Remember the acceptance of pain, the tolerance, the accepting tolerance, the second type of the patience is voluntarily accepting. Instead of saying, why, and why did I this thing, why shouldn't it happen to me, all this? So we will be open to acceptance. And one way to look at it is what Shantideva says here. Why is a man condemned to death not fortunate if he is released after having his hand cut off? Why am I, who is experiencing human misery, not fortunate if by that I am spared from the agonies of the hell? That's one way to look at it. As I mentioned before, thinking in such a way may not eliminate the existing pain and suffering, but at least if it doesn't help to prevent magnification, let me rephrase, at least it will help to prevent magnifying or magnification. So the analogy is very good here. It's somebody who is to be executed, who is on the death row, and if he is spared by just amputating his arm, that person will feel so grateful. Even though he lost his arm, he would still feel so grateful that he lost only his arm and he is still alive. Likewise, when we experience suffering, of course it is a result of our past karma. Remember, I have been repeatedly saying this. There are two ways to exhaust our negative karma. One way is through purification. If we do a powerful purification, then we will be able to exhaust that karma, negative karma. The other way is only through experiencing it, through ripening the fruit onto us. So when we go through this the pain and suffering in our life, in a way we are exhausting our own karma. We are burning or using up our negative karma. So in that sense, is a good way. So you see that the difference between adopting this kind of optimistic view than adopting a very pessimistic view. In both cases, suffering is there. But the one who adopts that optimistic view, I'm sure that that person will have less suffering. If there is physical pain, definitely he may experience, but there will be no mental pain. That's why I mentioned quite often in class that in monastery, the great practitioners, they pass away, they die from very rare sicknesses. And you wonder, how come? Aren't these great practitioners? How come? But it's because that they are great practitioners. They are able to purify their negativities. This life is not their first life. They have taken countless lives in the past. And during those past lives, they were not all the time great practitioners. There were times where they were also, like us, engaging in negative actions. From those past lives, they have accrued lots of negative karmas. Now in this life, realizing that they have amassed so much negative karma in the past, they engage in powerful, effective purification practice. And thereby, either many of them, they were able to exhaust completely. And those that were unable to exhaust completely, they kind of reduce the intensity. So thereby, they only experience in this life in a form of rare sicknesses, so that they were prevented from experiencing much more or much heavier negative consequences. So that's one way I feel that, because we will be encountering lots of suffering and pain in our life. It doesn't have to be very intense suffering or pain. There is always something that disappoints us. So when we are faced with such difficulties, that's one way to look at it. When you adopt such an attitude, it minimizes the intensity of pain, and it helps us to accept. So there's no tea break. So now we move on to this one, the anger. The second type of, or actually in this sequence is the third one, ignoring harm, letting go of harm and injuries caused by others. There are many, I think most part of chapter 6 is about coping with difficult people. So there's no time to bring in all of that. So one thing we can use, I feel that it is easy for us to relate to, is this one. Whether on the analysis, we do an analysis. whoever you feel the person is causing us harm. So we do an analysis whether that person is doing all this with self-control, with full freedom, or whether that person is under control of something else. So normally it says that on the analysis of whether the object has self-control, whether the person has self-control over him or her when the person causes harm to us. So here Shantideva says, if when under the influence of disturbing conceptions, people will even kill their treasured selves, how can they be expected not to cause harm to the bodies of other living beings? So basically, Shantideva is saying that the person has no control over it. The person is being controlled by his own delusion. I think better to go this. Okay, I think there is another verse later. It will come later. So basically saying that the other person is not really himself or herself. That person is kind of intoxicated by his delusion, anger. When a drunkard person hurls insult to us, against us, we don't get angry. We always excuse that person by saying that, oh, he is under the influence of alcohol or whatever intoxicants. So likewise, Shantideva was saying that the influence of the delusion is so strong that they even cause harm to themselves. Remember, one time I showed the statistics. Every day, how many people cause self-harm, engages in self-harm, and every day, what percentage of people commit suicide. So normally, people treasured themselves. The self is so precious. But when they are under the influence of anger, they even kill themselves. We hear stories of people killing their family members, loved ones, out of anger. So Shantideva is saying that if they are willing to engage in destroying their precious selves, then how can they be expected not to cause harm to the bodies of other living beings? So it is not a surprise. So this is one way to look at our enemies, or whom we dislike, whom we believe that they cause harm. So Shantideva is saying that towards these people, instead of getting angry, we should develop compassion, because they are under the strong influence. They are overpowered by their delusions. Even if I cannot develop compassion for all such people who, through the arisal of disturbing conceptions, set out to try and kill oneself and so forth, the last thing I should do is to become angry with them. It is actually they are the object of our compassion. even if we are unable to develop any shred of compassion, but Shantideva was saying that at least the least thing we can do is not to get angry with them. So these are very powerful words. And the reason why we get angry at people, why we make enemies, why we label the other person as our enemies or someone who is trying to get us, is because they are what you call interfering or becoming an obstacle to our wealth in terms of our attachment. In terms of gaining wealth, we see the other person as an obstacle, as somebody preventing us from gaining all that wealth or fame or name or status, whatever it is. So if we really examine closely why we are not happy with that person, it's all because of the attachment to something, either wealth, either fame, either name, either status. So Shantideva covered all kinds of all kinds of areas that the reasons that we label somebody as our enemy. So one is here. Although I may live happily for a long time through obtaining a great deal of material wealth, I shall go forth empty-handed and destitute, just like having been robbed by a thief. So this is, I feel, that is very important. So when we examine closely why we are so angry at another person, if we honestly examine it, there is always this element that either that person is preventing us from gaining material wealth, or is kind of affecting our fame and name. There's something that we something to do with our attachment to ourselves. So most common is the material wealth. So Shantideva addresses this. So material wealth is actually not that meaningful. Our life is so short. And when the time comes, I shall go forth empty-handed and destitute. So Shantideva is saying that it is really pointless to get angry over something that we have to leave behind. We will be using only for a very short term, or even that it may be, we may be using it or not is another thing. So it is not wise to get angry and then create all that negative consequences for something meaningless. If we can take whatever wealth and whatever material wealth, fame, name, whatever we can take with us when we journey into our next life, then of course it's worth fighting for it, worth getting angry and upset over it when somebody becomes an obstacle to it. But Shantideva was saying that it is worthless. We cannot get to carry or bring with us. When the time comes, it is like somebody robbed us of all that wealth, the material wealth. The only thing that we can bring is the virtue that includes patience. Instead of getting angry, if we have practiced patience, we can bring along with us that virtue. So this is what Steve Jobs said. In others' eyes, my life is the essence of success. But aside from work, I have a little joy. And in the end, wealth is just a fact of life to which I am accustomed. At this point, lying on the bed, sick and remembering all my life, I realize that all my recognition and wealth that I have is meaningless in the face of imminent death. This is supposed to be written by Steve Jobs, who is a billionaire, who was a billionaire, who is well known. Almost everyone knows in America, almost everybody knows about Steve Jobs. He is so famous, so wealthy, but on his deathbed, this is what he wrote. The recognition, the fame, the status, the wealth is meaningless. So why engage in something meaningless? We want to consider ourselves as a wise person, clever people. If we are really clever and wise, then we should develop or practice patience rather than give into anger. Let me take this. Hello. Not delay. Lazo, Lazo. Alle, Lazo, 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 oh, Lazo, Lazo. Sorry, I had to take this call. Asking for 233 Oakdale Drive, Corcoran, Rogers, 55374. So that was one way to contemplate. Another way is really the Buddhist way of thinking, is that Shantideva said, why we are experiencing all this suffering or pain, which seems so unfair and so unjust. But Shantideva is saying that previously I must have caused similar harm to other sentient beings. Therefore, it is right for this harm to be returned to me, who is the cause of injury to others. So this one is really thinking from the point of karma, how karma works. So from the Buddhist point of view, whatever little pleasant experience of pleasant or unpleasant, it is all a result of our past actions. Nothing unpleasant or pleasant experience is experienced without the cause that we have not created in the past. So this is, here I have this, this is supposed to be a boomerang. What goes around comes around. So that's what it's saying. So we have done this in the past. We have caused similar pain to other people. So now is payback time. So that's kind of a really looking from a higher level of understanding. So this is very effective. I think I've mentioned this several times. In Tibetan community, we also lose our loved ones. We also face misfortunes. But we don't hear of somebody developing depression because of that incident. There are families who lost their whole family members in accidents, but we don't see them going down that depression lane. And I always believe that it is because the first thing the Tibetan would say is, oh, it's my karma. They always interpret it as a karma. So that's why the acceptance comes easily. Whereas other traditions, they keep asking, why me? So you are not accepting. So when you have this strong conviction in karma, then it is easier to accept this. So this is one way to look at adverse situations. When such adverse situation arises, okay, nothing happens without my creating these causes and conditions I must have done in the past. So this, as I mentioned earlier, I am repeating here. I'm not saying that thinking this way will make your pain and problem go away. It will not. But it is easier to cope. It is less painful. It becomes less painful. Then we will be able to overcome it. There will be no additional pain and misery. You look at the facts, okay, this is happening, this is due to my karma, okay, so this is good in a sense that now that whatever karma that I've created is exhausted. One karma, finish. Then one famous line is this way. This we can also use all the time, because all this anger against another person arises because we see them as, not part of the good things happening to us. It's like there's nothing that person, nothing good that person provides for me. He is always to get us, get me. So Shantideva was saying that not the case. So other persons are so important. We have discussed that. Shantideva goes into detail how that if you don't have somebody to cause harm and pain or whom are difficult, then there's no way we can develop patience. There's no way we can perfect our patience, which is one of the main ingredients to become Buddha. So Shantideva goes on to explain how important other people are. They need to be treasured instead of getting angry with them. And in summary, Shantideva says, a Buddha's qualities are gained from sentient beings and the conquerors alike. What kind of practice is it then that honors only Buddhas but not beings? So if we considered ourselves as a logical person, one who really accepts logic, and one who consider if we consider ourselves very rational people, then we should accept this. We should revere other people as well, because the result that other person provides is same as Buddha. Our reason for paying homage and offering reverence to Buddha is because it results into gaining Buddhahood. If that is the case, then Shantideva was saying that we should do the same to other sentient beings, because doing so will also result in the same achieving the same goal. So that's one way to reflect. And then finally, so all the above two can be enhanced. The two types of patience can be reinforced by contemplating on the third type of patience, which is the patience of certitude. Thinking of, how all the causes and conditions play a role. Not just single thing produces a result. So here, one of the verse says, so when seeing a human enemy or even a friend committing an improper action, by thinking that such things arise from conditions, I shall remain in a happy frame of mind. So you have a picture of a house here. If this house to collapse, so you cannot just blame one person. It could be because of so many things. It could be because of the bricks not properly done. It could be the cements, the materials that we use. It could be the the steel bars that we use. It could be the way it was built, or it could be the fault of an architect who designed this, or it could be the engineer's fault. So there could be so many conditions. So you cannot just finger point to one person and then hold that person as your arch enemy. Remember, we talked about how things comes about because of the cause. Causes also come about because of causes and conditions. So when you think of this, then we won't be so bogged down, so boiled at one person or one thing. I think this is best explained. I've shared this experience, and I have even written and posted on our website what Mama Squirrel taught me. So the importance of looking from different angles. When you have all the facts together, those of you who were with me from the beginning, you can recollect the story. So there was this squirrel. We feed squirrels on our patio. And there was this squirrel, a big one. And it has kind of a reptile face, so we call her reptilian squirrel. And so when this squirrel comes, he bullies the rest of the squirrels, always chases. So we were a bit kind of annoyed with that. And we try not to throw more nuts when that is around, when he or she is around. And later we found out that she is a mama. And then we thought, oh, because she is a mama, she has babies to feed. So she really have to work hard to get as much food as possible. So the moment we have that information, our whole perspective, the interpretation of her behavior change. It could be true, it could be wrong, completely. We could be completely wrong. But after that, we kind of favor her. So every time she's there, we feed more, try to feed her more than the rest. Because we have this view that, oh, mother is a mama. So you see how when you look from a different angle, when you bring all the facts together, and you look from all the different angles, your perspective changes. So when it comes to holding this grudge against somebody, and if you are able to really look from various angles, maybe what you have kind of believed is not really true, and you will realize that, and then you will be able to release that intense anger. So that helps. So that's for the application. So that's is supposed to be the revision as well as how one can bring into our daily life practice. So different situations, you can use different stanzas. The examples that I showed today were my views. For me, when such situation arises, I feel that these are effective for me. But since we have covered the whole chapter, so you may have your own favorite lines or something that you can relate to or you can find it more effective. So you are welcome to use whatever works for you. The whole point is that whatever little knowledge you have, whatever little we understand, it is try our best to apply, used in our daily life. If we are unable to use all these approaches, these methods, then it is kind of pointless. And also you can't really say that this doesn't work. If we put them into practice, and then if it doesn't work, then you can at least say that, oh, I tried. I put them into practice, and it didn't work. Or Shantideva's method is not really an effective one. You can say that. But for us to be able to say that, we really need to try. So I wish you all the best. And as you see on the screen, that I will be on sabbatical leave. I'm doing this CPE course, which runs from November to April. So, depending on the workload, I will keep you informed whether there will be any online classes or not. So, stay tuned to our website. Thank you very much and see you soon again. Let's say the dedication prayers. Tagi jinyi sabe gyawa de tendan rowa kunla kangben dan gyabara chizun losan taba ye tembe nyingbu ringdo seje sho. Jambe bawe chedara kyamba dan kundu sambu tenya dejen. Teta gungi jesu talo jen gyawa deda tamje rabdo ngo dezun shekwe gyawa tamje ngowa gangla chodo ngakba de tagi gewe tsawa digun zangbo juje rabdo ngowa ge rangi chishin tobe lamji ne shudra tsewe tangbe tabge ge dowe yiji memba sejen gewe denba yurin zingyur chi. Thank you.